Vicor Scientific. They're just they're jumping off the chart. They're of course involved with COVID testing.
They are amazing.
It's really pretty amazing.
I think the number was 450 jobs, and of those, like 160 or 150 were local Charleston.
250 in South Carolina.
Yeah, 250 in South Carolina.
That's awesome. Great.
And Mr. Chairman, we are up on YouTube now, and Jeremy, if you can switch me back over to host.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good afternoon, everybody. This is October 28th, 2020. I'm calling to order the Public Safety Committee meeting. I welcome everybody who's listening in and participating in this committee meeting. We're going to take up just one item of business, which is the Charleston Police Department after action report. You will notice that the chief and Heather Malloy, and I can't make out who's actually behind them, but several members of the chief's team who were instrumental in the preparation of the after action report are with him in the Charleston Police Department training room. They're armed with their own computers, I believe. And I also noticed, in addition to our regular standing committee members, Councilmember Seekings, Shealy, and Saccharin, and the mayor, obviously, we also have listening in Councilmember Del Chapo and Councilmember Appel. I do not recognize or see any other council members besides the ones I have mentioned. Several weeks ago, we received this after action report. It was a preliminary report prepared by the Charleston Police Department. Members of the committee received a copy of it or had an opportunity to review it prior to the meeting. I have gone through it from cover to cover. It has been released to all members of City Council and has been released to the public. And I have disseminated it to members within my council member district as well. So we want to have this opportunity to go over the report. I'm going to put Councilmember Saccharin on the spot and ask him to lead us in either a prayer or a moment of silence.
I think I'm going to go with a moment of silence today. In our busy lives, it'd be nice to just take a 30-second break. So. Thank you, Chairman Shade.
Thank you for that, Councilmember. I believe we did receive our minutes from October the 8th, 2020. Committee member.
Councilmember Shade, we did not.
Oh, you did not? Okay. I've got so many minutes, Bethany, I can't remember what I've read and haven't read sometimes. So thank you for bringing that up. So we'll dispense with that. At this point, I'm going to ask if any members of the City Council who are members of the Public Safety Committee have any questions, comments, observations, anything that they wish to talk about regarding the report. And our normal order of business, I always go with start with our Vice Chair, Mr. Seekings, and then go around the room to Mr. Shealy and then Mr. Saccharin and the Mayor. So if I can do that in that order, Councilmember Seekings, comments, questions.
Just one very quickly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for participating and gang over at police headquarters. I just want to know where we are in the continuum in terms of the report that we have currently. Is it completed in its first round and phase from your all's perspective, or is there still some more work to do?
And I'll jump in on that, Councilmember Seekings. I've met with Heather and been on the phone with our Susan Medina and Heather and with the chief. We have given them a task to gather more information concerning business loss and information regarding collecting more data. So I've asked them to wait until after this meeting to take that information and complete that component of it for us.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions or?
Not from me.
Okay, Councilmember Shealy, we'll turn to you next, sir, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't really have any questions. Just again, want to thank Captain Thompson, Bruder, Gratella, Ms. Malloy, and of course, Chief Reynolds for the work that you put into this detailed report. And I know it hadn't been an easy task, and but from what I can see, you've been very transparent in identifying, shortcomings and areas where we can, and I can see that we will improve. So anyway, just wanted to say thank you and just let you know I've read the online comments that came in earlier today, and I appreciate that feedback, and I look forward to hearing the public comments tonight. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Saccharin.
Thank you, Chair. Not much from me. I just want, main question I would have just for folks listening and kind of general public, and maybe this is directed to Chief, just some key takeaways in plain English that folks in the public can hear from us about what we could have done differently. And hindsight is 2020, but are there one or two things that you could kind of distill down just for folks that are listening or folks in the public, because that is an in-depth report. It's very lengthy, very detailed, and I appreciate everyone working on it. But just some key takeaways, if anyone could speak to that.
So, Chief, I'm going to direct that to you. The question really is bullet point takeaways. I would think that you could share with us from the preliminary report.
Sure, I think there's a lot. One of them would be the intelligence gathering, working with our partners around the country, working with our partners in the state, federal, and local areas closely on following intelligence and just making sure that we're talking to each other. And there's a lot of areas that I think a lot of people learn a lot from with this event in Charleston on May 30th, as well as events around our state and around our country. So we've been in contact with all of our partners around the country, around the state, and regionally, talking very closely about that topic. And I'm not going to get into great detail about areas for improvement, but that's something that we've spent a lot of time on. And I'll just mention two others, and there's actually a lot of takeaways, but another key takeaway is communication with our communities. As we have protests, as we have pop-up events, as we have people showing up from other areas and having different events, making sure that we have close contact with our residential, business, and other community groups, make sure that we're talking and that we have advanced communication, that they understand what kind of a footprint maybe we're going to have on given days. And there's been a lot of protests since May 30th and the 31st, and our communication has been enhanced and much more. The title of the report is Strengthening Charleston. And I would describe it as much stronger, a lot more clarity, a lot more consistency, a lot more detail, a lot more timely. And the same goes for our internal people within our own organization. We did not communicate well on a lot of different things. This event happened very quickly. And so since then, we've had a lot of repetitions, a lot of opportunities to do better internally, focusing on communications with our people, command and control, and just making sure that we have more clarity about our plans. When other jurisdictions come, for example, from outside of Charleston, which we've been very blessed to have a lot of great partnerships. There's not a single jurisdiction that has not assisted us when asked throughout, not just on the 30th and 31st, but since then on many occasions. And when they come, they need clarity about what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, what their role is, what their assignments are, who's in charge. And so we've strengthened a lot of that communication internally, externally, and intelligence gathering, and just a lot of our strategies and how we deal with these events.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Councilman Sackett, any other follow-up on that or anything? Okay, thank you so much for both of y'all. Mayor, is there a comment at this point before we get into the public comment period?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to thank everybody who's been working on the report. I look forward to seeing the additions that we mentioned at our last meeting. I don't think they're exhaustive. I'm looking forward to the public comments this afternoon. I saw also that Captain Thompson had sent out an email this afternoon soliciting even further comment from the public. I think that's a very healthy thing. I'm thankful that we are in the mode to use this whole review as a learning experience to improve ourselves and better connect with our community and be able to do a better job. That's what this is all about. So I'm going to be quiet now, open up my ears, and ready to listen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that. Councilmember DeChapo, did you want to comment or anything? Just listening.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you for participating. Councilmember Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm just here to listen as well and to show my support, not only for our police department, but for this entire process, which I think speaks for itself. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Councilmember Jackson, I haven't seen you since we're outside sweating in that beautiful Charleston heat.
It was warm, but it was great to see West Edge celebrated. I appreciate the opportunity. I would join myself to my colleagues who are not on the committee officially. I sat in on the original explanation of the report, and I am looking forward to hearing what the community has to say. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Madam Clerk, I did see Councilmember Jackson with us, but are there any other council members I'm missing? I don't want to exclude anybody.
That's all I see, Councilmember.
Okay. All right. So the ladies and gentlemen, I know we received some online comments that we have been shared among us already. So Madam Clerk, are you you have a list of people who have called in or any other online comments?
I do, yes, sir. We have 14 people that have signed up to speak. So
Okay.
I don't know if you want to set a time limit. Just let me know what you would like to see.
I think that our custom for this has been about 2 minutes, and unless there's some general objection, I don't mind extending it to 3 minutes. This is an important phase of what we're doing. We only have 14 people who are talking. I don't want to preclude anybody. But so let's see if we can keep it to 3 minutes, unless there's a strong objection from anybody. Mr. Mayor, that okay? Okay, all right. So Madam Clerk, you're gonna call each person name out one at a time, and then we're gonna time you folks, please. We're being a little bit more generous than we normally do for public comment, but I do want to give everybody an opportunity to talk. We're going to listen at this point, take notes. It's being recorded on YouTube as well, so we'll have a recording of this. Please state your name as well. Anything else, Bethany, we need them to do besides state their name?
State their name is great. When I call their name, they can press *6 to unmute themselves, and then they can begin with their comment.
Okay, all right. So Bethany, our first person who wants to speak, go ahead and announce them and go from there.
Yep, our first person is Ali Meningakis, I think is how you pronounce that last name. If you would just press *6 and unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Ali Meningakis. I am the Executive Director of South Carolina for Criminal Justice Reform. Can I just make sure that you guys can hear me right now?
We can, but there's a little bit of a feedback as well. So I don't know if you're speaking too closely to the microphone or not. But there's a little bit of feedback, like a scrambling noise.
That's a static.
Okay.
Static, thank you.
Static.
Go ahead, Ali.
Is this better? Can you hear me better?
That's fine. Yes, ma'am, you're on.
Okay, great. Thank you all so much for having these meetings and for the transparency with looking into these issues, especially with the after action report in this committee in general, looking into not only the riots, as some have called it, but also the protesting from the summer as a result of George Floyd. At South Carolina for Criminal Justice Reform, our goal is to make our system, our criminal justice system in South Carolina better through creative and smart reform. And I think that we all have seen a crazy year in 2020. One of the many crazy things that have happened Of course, is continuing police brutality against minorities. We are no stranger to that here in Charleston. We've seen that with Walter Scott, which happened a few years ago, and again, unfortunately, in Minneapolis this past summer with George Floyd. That, I think, is the big issue here that's before our country in every state and not just in Charleston here. And that is what spurred this national uprising and demand for change and across our country, including Charleston. I think we understand that the national level of protesting was perhaps at an unprecedented level, at least in recent years, but our country is no stranger to change and to our First Amendment rights. We have at South Carolina for Criminal Justice Reform been doing a lot of research and investigation this past summer since the death of George Floyd, not just into the use of force laws when it comes to South Carolina, which, by the way, South Carolina does not have any law in the statute regulating police officer use of force. That is something we hope that all of you will support our desire to change that in the future. But we've also been looking into, police contact with the community. I think the chief, Reynolds, has done a great job since he came to Charleston and being transparent with us. He is, and his agency is the only agency we found in the entire state that makes their policies and procedures public on their website. No other agency that we've found does that. And we love that. We love the transparency. Unfortunately, we feel that this after-action report was not transparent, as the ACLU and our organization has laid out in our detailed letter that came out last week addressed to all of you. And specifically, it lacks transparency when it comes to not just the results of perhaps lack of police presence when it comes to the damage to businesses from the 30th, but the damage to people's liberties on the 31st and continuing since then. We've collected several videos, interviewed several witnesses and protesters who were present on the afternoon of 31st in Marion Square who were met with excessive use of force that was unjustified. We have seen videos where there have been individuals that were literally trampled by lines of police officers and detained, open firing with tear gas and pepper ball bullets at close range of young people exercising their First Amendment rights. And just as we don't want the damage that was done and the violence that was done to businesses to ever happen again, we do not want to see this type of use of force from our agencies in Charleston ever again, especially against people that were peaceful and unarmed, exercising their constitutional rights. That is why we're asking all of you and the police department to review when they're looking at this after-action report, not just, thank you. I'll just sum up. Thank you all so much, and I hope that you continue to look at these videos and analyze them in your next report. Thank you.
Thank you. The second
Thank you for
person.
your comments. And who's next, Bethany?
Yep. The second individual is Callie Shell. If you would please press *6 and unmute yourself.
Callie Shell, are you present with us?
You can press *6. All right.
All right, we'll do number 3.
Yep. Our third person is Chris Tittle. If you would press *6 and unmute yourself.
Yes, good evening. This is Chris Tittle. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. I'm a father, I'm a legal professional, and I'm a homeowner in District 3 in West Ashley. And I was one of several dozen people that was arrested on May 31st. And what I can only describe as one of the most violent, disorganized, and clearly retaliatory police actions I've ever experienced. I'm not sure what is the most disappointing fact about this report. As the previous speaker said, whether it's the complete lack of accountability for the violent mass arrests that took place in Marion Square on the 31st, whether it's the conclusion that CPD is somehow now more efficient at repressing protest, or the utter lack of irony in beginning this document with a statement that acknowledges the legitimate exercise of First Amendment rights and condemns excessive police force, but then does not even examine the repression of legitimate First Amendment rights and the use of excessive police force. So what I experienced in Marion Square clearly felt like a violent suppression of our free speech and a blatant use of excessive and clearly unnecessary force against a peaceful, socially distant, but yes, also righteously angry group of people. Protesters were literally taking a knee or lying on the ground in Marion Square as we watched a military vehicle roll into the square accompanied by a contingent of heavily armed riot police. You can picture this. It's the middle of the day on a Sunday afternoon, and there is a tank in Marion Square because a group of mostly college kids in yoga pants are holding signs asserting the humanity of Black people. I then watched as police proceeded to violently tackle people. I watched one officer apparently place his knee on the back of a young man's neck in much the same way as the world watched the police officer murder George Floyd. I watched as police shot people at very close range with pepper bullets and then used chemical weapons on people as they tried to comply with police orders to leave the square. So absolutely nothing about that police response was necessary for the safety of the people involved or any businesses on King Street. And the only way I can understand it is as a punitive response to protesters for whatever property damage may have occurred the night before. Furthermore, the mass arrest of peaceful citizens during a public health crisis directly endangered the lives of everyone involved. I was arrested for simply standing there observing police and then was left handcuffed and without my mask in an extremely small room with 5 other people for probably 3 or 4 hours. When I was eventually released the next day, you know, again, this is the height of the coronavirus pandemic. My family and I decided that the safest thing for me to do was to self-quarantine for over a week away from my newborn child and wife. So at every turn, the police presence that day in particular made everyone less safe, not more. It escalated violence rather than de-escalating. It repressed speech rather than protecting it. And it utilized excessive force rather than condemning it, as the report says. So we need far more accountability and transparency on what took place then and what has continued as a pattern of targeting specifically Black protesters since then.
Okay, Chris, thank
Thank
you so much for your comments. All right, Bethany, who's our 4th caller?
Our next caller is Donna White. If you would please press *6 and unmute yourself.
And Bethany, you cut off in the middle of that. Don White, did you say?
Donna White.
Oh, Donna White, thank you. Donna,
Yes,
if you were
can you all hear?
Yes.
Yes, my name is Donna White. I'm a board member with South Carolina for Criminal Justice Reform. I'm also a licensed professional counselor and a licensed addiction counselor. With the events involving racial injustice and the use of force by police occurring across the nation, people are experiencing a lot of trauma. And protesting is a way for people to utilize freedom of speech and express their emotions. And trauma responses are different for individuals, and incidents like the ones in May can result in protest-related trauma. Some of the common trauma responses include like feeling hopeless, having trouble concentrating, making decisions, getting startled very easily, hypervigilant, dreams, memories, flashbacks, avoidance. And while people experience trauma differently and there's no way to know how they will respond, trauma can be experienced, whether directly there or whether it's witnessed, is still experienced the same way. I think recent threats to call off protesting, as well as continuous messaging to discourage the gathering of people, doesn't really build trust, but instead it reinforces the lack of trust. And for those that experience trauma responses to events like the one in May and have the response such as avoidance, hopelessness, and an overall negative outlook on the future, requests for people to stay silent only reinforces these feelings. And the threatening tone of these messages reinforces the trauma and sends a message that people can only be seen and heard on the terms that you all allow. As it relates to the incident in May and the responses from the police, I believe considerations to the impacts of trauma related to the excessive use of force and unnecessary detention of citizens should be given. I would also like to see policies that not only consider the physical and legal rights of citizens, but policies that include the impact of trauma as well as guide future actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Okay, Bethany.
Our fifth person is Evan Nowell or
Susan?
Newell. If
Susan
you can press
Newell?
star 6. Newell, yeah. Yes, sir.
Ms.
You
Newell,
can press star 6 to unmute yourself.
Are you with us, Ms. Newell?
Hey there, this is Evan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Your first name is Evan?
Yeah, so
Evan.
this is Evan Nowell.
Okay.
Nowell, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Tonight, I am speaking as a concerned citizen. I must first say that while the words dignity and respect are used several times in this after-action report, there was nothing dignified or respectful about how the police department and other agencies responded to peaceful protest on May 31st. That was the day that I participated in peaceful protest. The account offered by CPD of the events that afternoon are incomplete at best and irresponsible at worst. From East Bay Street through Reed Street to Meeting Street to Marion Square, fellow citizens and I were marching peacefully on sidewalks, I should add, in protest against police brutality while a military-style tank followed in pursuit, corralling us into the square, surrounded by an extreme show of force that people have detailed earlier, ordering us to disperse at a moment's notice, and then quickly charging towards the group and firing tear gas and pepper bullets. Where are those details in the report? This police-led escalation has been well documented by written and photo and video accounts. And for CPD and the city, I would add, to disregard that evidence in the after-action report and through media interviews and public comments is not only disingenuous, but also a clear breach of public safety and law enforcement duty. Simply put, the escalation and acts of aggression on the afternoon of May 31st came from police, not protesters, and I'm a firsthand witness to that. Also, I would add, as a strategic communications advisor to public and private sector leaders across the country, I must also say that the narrative carefully crafted by CPD in this after-action report shows a fundamental lack of leadership, which requires complete accountability. And as everybody has pointed out so far, accountability is the one thing missing from this report. Lastly, I would be remiss if I did not address the fact that CPD's consistent framing of quote unquote riots and quote unquote unlawful assembly since May 31st distracts from the central issue of these peaceful protests, which is that Black Lives Matter. Thank you all for the time.
Thank you, sir. Okay. That was Evan.
Number 6.
I'm sorry.
Yep. Is Frank Knack. If you could press star 6 to unmute yourself.
And Bethany, are you saying Frank?
Frank
Hi,
Knack.
can you all hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Can you just
Really appreciate the
identify
opportunity.
yourself for the record, please, one more time for us?
Definitely. My name is Frank Knack. I'm the executive director of the ACLU of South Carolina and also a resident of James Island. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much for this opportunity to testify today and for your willingness to hear and take public comment on this very important matter. And I think just to give it some frame before I dig into our concerns with the report, I think it's important to remember that what the role of policing around protests should be. And that is that the role of police is to protect protesters and to engage in de-escalation when necessary, neither of which happened that day. I arrived in Marion Square that day around 3:30 as a legal observer, and what I witnessed couldn't be different than what I read in the report submitted by CPD. And I wanted to touch on 4 specific areas where we had serious concerns, and these are all in the document that we had submitted to everyone on this committee last week, as Ali mentioned earlier. One is serious factual inaccuracies and omissions. The second is the use of inflammatory and passive language. The third is the massive amount of control over community members that CPD assumes it maintains. That was clear from this report. And the fourth area is CPD's clear violation of its own department policies. And to dig into each of these a little bit, regarding the factual inaccuracies and omissions, the report talks about the police use of force beginning after protesters threw objects at them. I was there when this began. I saw no such objects. I had a very clear view of what was happening at the time. That is something that, at least from what I could tell, and from all the other folks we have spoken with, did not happen. In addition, we had sent numerous letters to the CPD and to the city over the past couple months to specifically addressing our concerns with what happened on May 31st and have not received an adequate response. But I think it is important to note in the response we received on June 22nd from the city of Charleston, there was no mention of any violent actions by protesters in justifying the police action. So I'm curious what has happened between June 22nd and now to all of a sudden have as a justification something that they didn't talk about in their earlier letter to us. In fact, in that letter, it seemed to imply that they were justifying the actions on what had happened the evening before, which, as I'll get to later, conflicts with their own internal department policies. Another serious omission from the letter is the way it basically just glosses over the extreme violence that police used on the east side later that evening against East Side community members, basically bringing the same level of force and violence that it used in Marion Square to the East Side. And I think it's important to note that we've heard CPD, at least on one occasion, if not more, talk about that they have not heard any complaints from the community. And I'm not quite sure what they mean by that when we know that there have been numerous complaints made by folks, including us, including others, and the East Side community leaders in particular, about the violence that occurred that evening. I'm not sure it's because they haven't gone through their formal CPD.
I think you run over your time, so you can just wrap up.
Okay, I apologize. I just really appreciate this process. I hope you all will take a deep look at our letter that we submitted and recognize that the image and reality of CPD is quite different. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Bethany.
Our next citizen is Gloria Aslanitis. If you could please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hey, Gloria.
Hello, I'm Gloria Aslanitis, and I live in Peters District.
Yes, you do.
What I'd like to say is, I guess my opinion differs from the previous speakers. I want to thank you guys for going through this process, and I want to also thank you for getting what unexpectedly happened on May 30th, not to allow it to happen again on May 31st. And also without the loss of any life or anybody getting hurt. And I mean, as well as the police lives as well. I want to thank you. I fully support your effort. I think what you're doing is great. And even trying to be transparent and going through this process. So I want to say thank you. Most of the community supports you and are appreciative of all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. We appreciate those comments. Okay. And I appreciate everybody's comments that we've heard from so far. So I didn't want to single Gloria out, but everybody who's spoken, thank you for your input and your comments. Okay, Bethany.
Yep. Our next citizen is Kelly Goodlew. If you could please press *6 to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, Kelly's last name?
It's Goodlow.
Kelly Goodlew. Too low.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, just state your name for us one more time, Kelly, please.
My name's Kelly Goodlow. Before I start, I just wanted to respond. I heard the chief say how thankful he was for the agencies who supported Charleston Police Department. And I just wanted to make sure that I note that the help Charleston Police Department received from SLED was the most aggressive and violent policing I've ever witnessed, and it was wrong, and we are not thankful for it. In addition, I would like to say I was not at the protest May 31st, but I was at the peaceful protest 3 months later on August 29th, when supposedly the police department had learned a lot from the May protest. On August 29th, I stood with a group who gathered at Marion Square to remember the victims of police violence and to reiterate the following goals of our protest: to prioritize African American businesses, to support the Phillips community, to support local housing trust fund, to fully fund public schools, to revise U.S. history and English curriculum to accurately portray African American history and culture, to have parent advocates at all schools, for statewide police department racial bias audits, to repeal the Heritage Act, and to demilitarize the police and divest funds from the police department to reinvest in the community. As we marched down King Street on the sidewalk, our group, which was a group of people in shorts and t-shirts and tennis shoes, were met by police in riot gear. At that block, the group began to spill in the street when confronted with those police in riot gear. As we rerouted down the side street, chanting Black Lives Matter, reminding each other to stay on the sidewalk, at one point, a girl ran across the street to the other side on the sidewalk, to cross the street to the other sidewalk, while holding her phone to film a police SUV. At that point, a SLED officer stopped the SUV and ran full speed after her, tackling her to the ground. It was violent, it was excessive, and it was wrong. As the protest moved on down the sidewalks, we found ourselves trapped and detained between two lines of police in riot gear. It was confusing and it was scary. I asked an officer parked in the street with his window down why they were doing this, what they wanted us to do, and how could we leave safely. He ignored all my questions and rolled up his window, looking right past me. The Charleston Police Department mission states that the police department wants to serve all people with respect, fairness, and compassion. This wasn't respect, this wasn't fairness, and this wasn't compassion. It was obvious that the police department has a goal of silencing protesters and protecting the facade of low country charm for tourism, and no interest in truly serving the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Bethany?
Yep, our next citizen is Kylon Middleton. If you could please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Reverend Middleton?
Mr. Middleton, if you could please press *6.
Okay. So Bethany, I've got two folks so far who haven't responded. We'll circle back when we go through the rest and come back to those two then, okay?
Okay, yep. Our next citizen is Madison Martinborough. If you could please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Madison Martinborough, and I'm a student at the College of Charleston. And I'm speaking today not because I was at the protest, but because I'm speaking as a concerned citizen. Myself, along with many people I'm sure, have all seen the videos of the protest, including the video of a woman who was literally being walked over, and the dozens of videos showing police-led escalation that occurred in Marion Square. And I'm really just asking that everyone take responsibility for what happened and then create a plan to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And for everyone, including law enforcement, to consistently share transparent information with the public so that we're aware of what's going on. It was 3:30 in Marion Square, I believe, and there was a group of people peacefully protesting, and then a large group of law enforcement officers from multiple departments arrived wearing pads, gas masks, and helmets, and were accompanied by at least one armored vehicle, demanding that all protesters disperse. Not only were they arresting people and firing projectiles, but the CPD also very broadly declared the protest unlawful and arrested people for disobeying a lawful order, even though there were no underlying crimes that took place that day. So I just wanted to make a comment about that and also recognize that the act of declaring a protest in a public space as unlawful is quite unconstitutional, especially when it was in fact peaceful. Watching these protests and seeing the way it was handled, to be honest, was very sad. It was very excessive. It didn't represent our community well. And it was honestly scary to see that this is how trained professionals dealt with a situation that, through the many videos and personal experiences and stories that I heard, was not actually a violent protest. And this really shouldn't have happened, as I said, in the first place. And there does need to be more transparency with law enforcement and why these events occurred the way they did. The report was really filled with passing references to the violence by law enforcement that weren't specific and very broad. And as someone previously mentioned before, this was a group of young college kids, 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds. This should not have occurred the way it did, and there needs to be more accountability. And I really quickly want to comment. One of the comments I read while I was signing up to speak, it was talking about how we're just trying to politicize this. And I just want to say for everyone watching and to you all that this is not something any of us today are trying to politicize. It's not a political issue. It's 100% bipartisan because it affects all of us and how we handle situations with our citizens. It's an American issue, and nobody that I know, at least, is trying to politicize this. People are simply trying to have their First Amendment rights protected without being grouped in as rioters. So to summarize, as everyone is saying, accountability is what we're asking for. Accountability and action to prevent this from happening again.
Thank you, Madison.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next citizen is Missy Gold. If you could please press *6 to unmute yourself and then state your name for the record.
Hi there, this is Missy Gold.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to thank the committee for giving us time to speak. I want to thank the eloquent speakers who have spoken before me. I am only speaking to the night of May the 30th, and I am thankful to the police chief and to the mayor that their strategy contained those intruders, and I will call them intruders, for the events that erupted up in northern part of King Street, because it could have erupted into death and more destruction. And I just want to offer my support to our police chief and to our police department as they move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Bethany?
Our next citizen
Hold on one
is
second. Councilman
Nancy.
It was Councilman Sackman. Did you have a?
Yeah, there's someone, I just got a message that someone is on by the name of Callie Shell, who tried to sign up. I think her name was called, so she is on the line.
Yeah,
Okay.
she was our second
Councilmember
person.
Shea, do you want me to recognize?
Yeah, go back to Callie Shell. She was our second person. I think you called. Yeah. Callie, are you with us?
Yep.
Okay.
Hi, I am now with you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, just state your name for the record for us one more
Yes,
time,
ma'am.
please.
I will. Sorry about my tech problems. My name is Callie Shell, and I work for CNN and Time Magazine, and I have covered political unrest for 35 years, and I do understand that everything you guys are, and I say guys, I haven't seen any women, but what you're trying to do is hard. But I have read your entire report, and I would like to state that I was there that day, and my 19-year-old or 18-year-old son at the time was also there taking photographs for the Wando newspaper. So I have gone back and read your report and gone through all of our images, and what kind of concerns me is, with all due respect, there are a lot of inaccuracies of what happened on the day of May 31st. And as a person who grew up in Charleston and stood in Francis Marion Square, I was pretty horrified. So quickly, I just wanted to address a couple of things. On page 8, you note that Tier 3 is when officers go in full riot gear, helmets, gas masks, batons, and shields, and less lethal options, but only when it is disorderly and destructive behavior. I know things happened the night before, but at the time, and we have photographs, I just want to say everything I'm talking about is based on the images, and all our images capture the time. At the time that police officers were in gas masks and fully armed at Tier 3, it was not later in the afternoon, it was 3 o'clock. I will note that in a lot of our images, the more aggressive officers were definitely the sheriff's department. But what makes me nervous about the report is the inaccuracies. So a couple of quick things I'd like to note. In the portion of 1 to 3 p.m., the bridge, actually, there were never 50. There were less than 50 people there. I went and counted every single person in the photographs, and the lane was being blocked by officers in a large vehicle. When the group was asked to disperse, and they were asked a couple of times, but they did, and it was done over a bullhorn, they were followed, and there were kids in this group. They were followed by a large vehicle, fully armed, and a guy on the bullhorn telling them to walk down the street, and they were followed by this vehicle on the bullhorn. With that said, as we continued the day of the 31st from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., and I don't know if anybody would like to see them, but as you do the TikTok, there are photographs of protesters laying on the ground with their hands on their back. At one point, they get up. They are greeted by fully armed officers with gas masks on, with the shields down. At one point, when you look in the photographs, you see officers, sheriff's deputies, approaching these young people. Their hands are in the air. They have nothing on them. Their billy clubs are out. There are actually photographs of officers who take their billy clubs around the backs of these females and pull in to their backs. There are other photographs of officers shooting rubber bullets into another woman's chest and stomach. Actually, all these photographs can be seen on Instagram. The scary thing that happened during this part is there are also photographs of a. Is that 2 minutes? Okay.
We gave you three, so we appreciate that. And Callie, I will tell you.
No, I'm so sorry. I think my clock is wrong. So I just
Callie,
think that, that's all I'll say.
Let me just tell you this. If there's something you want to share, we'll give you an email address, or you can drop it off physically. But if there's something you want to share with photographs or other documents, we're glad to receive that from you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so that was Callie Shell, and that was our second person on the list. So I'm down to number 12, Bethany.
Yep. Number 12 is Nancy Moore. If you could press *6 to unmute yourself and then state your name.
Nancy?
Miss Moore?
Nancy Moore? Is someone trying to talk? Hello? Hello, Nancy?
Press *6 to unmute.
I think that may have been someone else.
Okay, all righty. So we'll circle back around to Nancy as well, Bethany.
All right, our next citizen is Stuart Weinberg. If you could press *6 to unmute.
Say the first name again, please.
Stuart.
Stuart, are you available, please?
*6. Mr. Weinberg, if you could press *6 to unmute yourself.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Now, last one.
All right. Number 14 is Zachary Swanson. If you could press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes. Very clear.
Okay, great. My name is Zachary Swanson, and I am speaking as a very concerned citizen. The Charleston Police Department made the following statement in their preliminary report regarding the May 30th and May 31st protests in Charleston. Quote, "It is important to acknowledge that the vast majority of protesters, there were approximately 2,000 present, remained peaceful and were legitimately exercising their First Amendment rights. Why then did officers engage in acts of violence, deploying chemical weapons and rubber bullets against these same peaceful protesters? The answer is clear as day. It was an act of revenge. The police were angry that their image had been tarnished by property damage on May 30th, and so on May 31st, they responded in full force, attacking these peaceful protesters for absolutely no reason. Their reasoning for declaring the protest unlawful is asinine at best. The report mentions isolated instances of property damage and water bottles thrown at police officers. The police then decided that the appropriate response to these minor incidents was severe collective punishment. Not only were weapons used against the peaceful protesters, but many were arrested simply for being there and exercising their First Amendment rights in a public forum. Seemingly aware of the unlawfulness of these arrests, dozens of these protesters later had their charges completely dropped months later. Charleston Police Department should do the right thing and dismiss all charges from May 31st. The City Council should also listen to the Charleston People's Budget Coalition and reallocate $5 million from Charleston Police Department budget into permanently affordable housing, youth and education programs, sidewalks, weatherization programs, living wages for city employees, and the Special Commission on Equity, Inclusion, and Racial Conciliation. Thank you very much.
Great. She said, if it helps, you're the only person they asked.
Thank you for that call.
Submit a right, because I talked too long.
Hello. All right, so Bethany, I have Kylon Middleton, Nancy Moore, and Stuart, and I didn't get Stuart's last name.
Stuart Weinberg.
So would you call those three names out one more time and see if any of those folks are present?
Yes, sir. Kylon Middleton, if you are on the line, please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Mr. Middleton. All right.
The next person.
Nancy Moore, if you are on the line. Yep, Nancy Moore, if you are on the line, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Miss Moore, are you on the line?
And the last
All
person.
right. And then the third person I have is Stuart Weinberg. If you are on the line, please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Okay, got it.
There he is. Okay, hi.
Yes, sir.
I'm Stuart Weinberg, a community organizer, and after a full day of peaceful demonstrations on May 30th, no one expected the civil unrest that happened that evening. I'm a very proud member of the city of Charleston, but I wasn't proud that night. But I am proud now because through the mayor, the chief, and members of the city council, once again, you have demonstrated that you just don't sit idly by and let something happen. You investigate, you look at reasons that you can make sure nothing like that ever happens again. Things like the fact that as a city, we recognize and denounce and apologize for the city's role in slavery. We actually ran a illumination project. We look at flooding, we look at climate change, and now we're looking at civil unrest and how we could do things better in the city of Charleston. So I'm proud now. I wasn't proud on May 30th or May 31st, but I'm proud now because once again, you guys never stop looking at yourselves to make sure that this is the best place to live in the United States. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, so Bethany, that would include all the folks who have signed up.
Last one. Thank you. Right.
So if you're not talking, we'd ask you to go ahead and mute yourself again for us, please. Thank you. So just a couple of closing comments and remind everybody that the report that has been released is a preliminary report. Part of the process is to receive input from the community. This is part of the process that we received from you. Captain Dustin Thompson has sent out an email to provide opportunities for folks to comment further. We'll keep that open. The next part of this is that we will continue to receive more information. I've asked the chief and Heather to gather more specific information and to include in the report to make it as full as possible. Captain Thompson, are you with us? I can't tell if you're in the main room with the chief and Heather.
I am here.
Okay, and so can you just elaborate quickly as to this email that we received a copy of? Are you encouraging folks to respond back to you with that email address?
Absolutely. We're just looking for anyone in the community that wants to a little bit more of a follow-up. We want to hear their story. We want to hear how we can improve and any feedback that they have from May 30th and 31st. So just one more step to, we're going to leave it open for 30 days. And so to give City Council, our Citizens Advisory Council, and several other members in the community to identify individuals that would like to take one step further and participate in this after action. So we'll leave that open for 30 days.
And what email address should they respond to?
They can respond to my email address, and I'll be happy to give that out now, or we can send it out some other way.
So if you can, where can they find that email address? Is that online somewhere at CPD website, or is it?
Yes, sir. It's under the police page on the city's email website and listed under captains, Captain Dustin Thompson.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and read out the email right now? If people want to jot that down, they can now, and then they can go to the city page, just police department's page on the city's official website. So.
Yes, sir. My email address is all lowercase, Thompson, THOMPSON, D for Dustin, but it's just Thompson D at Charleston-SC.gov.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. So folks, if you have something that you want to officially comment on, if you want to share in written form what you have spoken about, and Callie, I think you have some photographs that you wanted to share, please send that to Captain Thompson. We receive that. Heather, I'm gonna call on you. I think you've got some other information that you're still gathering. Is that correct?
Yes. Since our last meeting, I have started to gather some property damage information from the businesses as discussed at the last meeting. And we have additionally started the process of collecting other information from the public, which Dustin just referred to. So we are in that process right now.
All right. Okay, thank you so much for that, Heather. Chief Reynolds, any further closing comments?
Sure. First, I want to thank everyone for participating in this evening, and want everyone who participated to know that the Charleston Police Department values and appreciates everyone's comments. I want to thank all of our residents again, like I did last time, and business owners in the city that endured such difficult times on May 30th and May 31st. This has been a very challenging and difficult year, 2020, and the riots in particular have become a learning opportunity. There is substantial ongoing work and progress being achieved. Some of it has been referenced tonight. Much of it's in the report, and we'll take more from tonight in the comments that we received. The comments today and will help us grow stronger, learn, improve, and take ownership of areas and give the community what they deserve, what they expect, and certainly what they need from us. Your comments will assist us in making improvements, in helping us adapt, and helping our city be in a better place. And I know that one of the things when you're done, I think with this portion that you had asked me was to speak just briefly about the elections.
Yes, sir. And I'm gonna come back to that in just one second, Chief, and thanks for reminding me about that part. So, Mayor, is any closing comments you wish to make? And now, then I'll ask any of our city council members if they have a closing comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this public hearing, and to those who participated. Many of you who did participate tonight may know someone else who was there that day or the day before, and please feel free to share Captain Thompson's address. So we're open to hear additional comments and experiences that happened over that weekend and take it all into account. So just thank you for participating.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any members of our on City Council, any members of City Council wish to make any further comments? Members of the committee or anybody else? Okay.
Just very briefly, Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank all the members of the community that took time out to make comment tonight. And please know that we are listening, and all of this will be taken into account, not only through this report, but as we move forward as a community. So I think this public input has been very, very beneficial to all of us. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Any other council member? Okay. I'll close out in a few seconds, but I do want to just call on the chief. I have received, and I think other members of council may have as well, numerous inquiries as to what to expect coming up with our election next week. And I've been in contact with the chief. I think this is something that people are concerned about with the election next Tuesday. And Chief, you want to comment about what is going on locally and statewide, and I think even nationally with police preparation.
Yes, so we've been on calls and spoken with our counterparts around the country. We've spoken to people around the state. I've participated in a call with the mayor's office, with the mayor and the Board of Elections. The sheriff's office has an action plan for the county, and we're participating in that. And I think that the biggest point I think that I would make is that we're all working together. We're communicating every day about information that may be received. And throughout the election, the day before, the night of, the day of, and the days following, we have a staffing plan where we've modified people's days off and have a high level focus on making sure that we have a safe and successful election, and that we work closely with the polls. And if there's information that's received where there's a threat, or there's an event that needs our protection and our response, that we're doing that appropriately and efficiently and in conjunction with each other. We've met in person with the area chiefs and staffs. With me tonight actually is Jason Bruder, who's actually authored an incident action plan for the Charleston Police Department. And he's done that in conjunction with all the other agencies in the region. So there's a lot of conversation, there's a lot of preparation, and I've gotten a lot of questions about that. And I think it's important to let our communities know that we're paying close attention to the information as it comes out. Some of the things that we've talked about, even just basic logistics of what happens if there's not a clear winner, what happens with the mail-in ballots, what happens with different things like that, and how does that affect the news cycle and the information that is released. And so whatever we do, we're kind of communicating together amongst each other and with the Board of Elections to make sure that we're in sync and that we're keeping our city safe and our region.
Thank you, Chief, for those comments. And yes, sir, Councilmember Sackman.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. Chief, is there any planning or effort for Charleston County Board of Elections to send some information out just for voters to feel more safe when they come out to the polls, given the environment that we're in? Just wondering if there's any kind of concerted effort or any kind of communication that you know of that's going out.
You know, that's a good question, Mayor. I don't know if you can speak to that or Jason, but I know that they are very in tune to that issue. And like I said, we've met in person, we've met by Zoom. We've talked about that. If there's an issue, for example, in a polling place outside the city, we'll be immediately aware of that. If there's trends, if there's a concern, if there's an activity, who's allowed in the polling places, who's not, how their logistics work. Mayor, I don't know if you want to speak to that, but I know that we're in close contact. I can't speak for their PIO and that information. That's a good suggestion, and maybe we can kind of connect with them tomorrow to make that recommendation.
Mr.
We'll
Mayor?
follow. No, I agree. We'll follow up on that tomorrow with you, Councilman.
Okay. Thank you for that information, and Councilmember Saccharin, thank you for that question. We'll follow back up with that. So folks, next Tuesday is election day. If you have not voted, I can only encourage you to please go out and vote. I voted at the Charleston Library, not this Monday, but the Monday before. It was easy, it was fast, it was well run. I was very proud of our county delegation, how they operated that voting process. So please, this is an important election from the president all the way down to our local representatives, state and county. I can only just emphasize how important it is for you to vote. Please do so. Please do so safely. We want to hear your voice. Since being on council, one of the things that has just generally impressed me is that this is part of the most purest form of democracy. When we get to hear from you, that we open ourselves up to hear from the public. This is critical. We do this on some things that we consider a little more mundane, dealing with issues of zoning and land use, or when we have citizen input on planning things from projects that are around the city. But we try our best to open ourselves up to hear from you. This is your city. This is your community. We're here to serve you, and we're to serve you to the best of our ability. We can only do that when we have information. We can only do that when we hear from you. And so hearing from you today was very important. As Captain Thompson mentioned to you a few moments ago, we will keep this process open for another 30 days. So encourage folks to send emails at that address, to send in information so we can make this report as complete as possible and as transparent as possible. That is important to all of us. Once that information is received, and we'll be a little pushy and try to get the department to complete the report before the end of the year. That may not be feasible because there may be more information that comes in. It may take some more time for them to run down some other information. But that's our goal. Our goal is to then have a final draft, submit it to council for approval, and for us to move on, hopefully be a better city and a better police department and a better community. So with that, again, I thank everybody who has been listening into this. I thank everybody who has called in. This is important for all of us. We do want to make sure our community is safe. We do want to make sure that we balance our interests with folks who have an absolute right to free speech and assembly. That is important to us as well. So we appreciate the comments. We appreciate the concerns. We appreciate your outlook on all of this. And we'll get back to you after we compile this information. With that being said, God bless all of y'all. Thank you all for being involved. Please go out and vote. And I'll emphasize that again. Please go out and vote. This is too important of a year for all of us, all the way from national to local elections. Take care, everybody. And this meeting is hereby adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everybody.
Good job, Bethany.
Thanks.
Good night, y'all.
Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
Everybody take
Good job,
care.
Bethany.
All right. Voting next time, Marie.
I just texted you a picture of him watching.
Oh, good. All right. Good night, all. Thank you, Bethany. Well done.